We're here to talk about Bennington. This view is from the White Rocks, so if you ever take the White Rocks Trail off of North Branch Street and go up there, this is the view you see. It's an iconic vision of who we are in Bennington, at least in terms of our geographical landscape. But of course, our story goes a lot farther back than that. And realistically, want to screw that up?
I'll just
Okay. And realistically, our story starts with Native Americans. And I think it's important for us to remember that because in a lot of the traditional histories that are written about Vermont, Native Americans are pretty much written out of the story. There has been some work to remedy that, but it is an ongoing issue for us. And in fact, this is referencing the archaeological dig that happened at the Cloverleaf site, which is where 279 goes over the river by Hannaford. And what we discovered there was an active site used by Native Americans as they lived in this area. Of course, for us colonials, for European settlers, our story starts much later. The charter for Bennington, of course, is dated in 1749. But it wasn't until several years later, 1761, before the first settlers arrived. But in that interim, Samuel Robinson, one of our founding fathers, actually got to visit Bennington on his way to the French and Indian Wars along the frontier with Canada. So he got a good look at the land that was in this area. And he clearly felt it was a place where he wanted to settle. Of course, we're named after Benning Wentworth, the governor of New Hampshire, who, although arguably had the less good claim to these lands, he was quicker to act than New York and really got the jump on things in terms of selling off these lands. And by the way, we currently are the 5th largest town in Vermont.
Jonah, can I ask you a question?
Actually, why don't we save the questions to the end? Is that okay?
Yep.
Otherwise, we could be here all day, trust me. So much to talk about. And actually, that charter we talked about, there it is. There's our town clerk, Cassie Barbo, with the 1749 charter, signed by Benning Wentworth. And also a picture of the town records vault, the original records vault. So the town really kind of has two pieces to it, right? One side is political, and that is our select board. You guys elect them, they set the policies, they're the political side of our government. The other side is the part that Shannon and I are now part of. This is the town management side, and it's of course led by Stu Hurd, our town manager. And let me tell you, in our town charter, it requires that we be apolitical, and I love and embrace that. And in fact, since I've been hired, I have not had a single political conversation with anyone in the town. And I gotta say, as a general rule of thumb, if you limit your political conversations prior to the 1800s, it goes much better. And of course, the town does a lot. I said here 100 plus, but I read in the paper today we're down to about 95. I'm not sure what happened. But we have 95 spread across 10 departments, covers big picture areas like fire, police, infrastructure. And you're going to hear a lot more about all of those things as part of this presentation. And of course, it includes our department, which is community outreach. I am actually in Shannon's department, which is really exciting because there's so much crossover in what we do. And actually, at this point, as we start talking about big picture, it's really an appropriate time to let Shannon take the lead on these next few slides.
Great, thanks. So, for everyone to know, one of the things that's happened over the last year is that the town of Bennington has developed a vision statement. And this in part grew out of the different meetings that have led up to the Safety and Equity Task Force that Marsh mentioned earlier. And our vision statement is that Bennington is a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, and resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from an outstanding quality of life. So this is an aspirational statement. We know we're not there yet, but it's where we want to be. So this is our vision statement. And our mission is serving people through teamwork. And I've now been working for the town for 3 years, and I have to say that we really are a team. I mean, we work, Jonah and I are now working together in the same office, but really no project happens without working together. So I think we do a good job of that. So part of these slides came out of, who's familiar with the Vermont Council on Rural Development? you know about them, you know, they did a visit to Pownell, they do community visits all over the state. So they came to Bennington 10 years ago, and some of these themes came out of those meetings. And so we just recently revisited the 10-year anniversary of that visit. And one of the themes was to advance, these were priorities that were set by community members. So I think there were something like, I can't remember, 300 people that participated. And one of the priorities that was set was to advance community communications and a positive town image. So I'm happy to say that part of why Jonah is here is that that was a priority that the select board said, you know, we really need to move forward with improving communications in the town, realizing that community development, you know, we needed another person to really focus in on communications, and Jonah was hired. So that's one of the initiatives that's happened. But also, you know, I think our townwide marketing campaign, Vermont Begins Here, is also putting Bennington forward with a positive image to visitors as well as locals. The Senior Center and Community News, which has been out of the Senior Center, but is now partnered with the Bennington Banner to do an insert in the paper. And I don't know if anyone saw that recently. We're going to do that, I think it's every 2 months now. There's going to be a newsletter that comes out online and in the Bennington Banner. And then we've been using social media through the rec center and the town's Facebook pages to really get the word out about what's happening in town, what's happening in our different departments, and particularly around community recreation. So some of those social media posts, these are examples that Jonah has really started to do more of and is getting a lot of traction in. The before and after is the pathway at Orchard Village, Orchard Village and Appleby?
Yeah. Orchard Village and Willowbrook.
Willowbrook, I get them right.
And
So,
I admire on the left the board and shopping cart engineering that went into the prior version. I mean,
exactly. Well, I mean, you know, this was it's a great example of collaboration because Mark Andrews, who's the transportation planner for the BCRC, the Bennington County Regional Commission, really spearheaded this project. And his work is looking at what are the pathways that people already use and how can we develop them. And this came out of kids trying to get to school and actually throwing down boards along the swamp. And we worked together with the BCRC and the state to get funding to create this pathway. So that's a great example. And Jonah shared that people were excited to see. The finished product is really beautiful. If you haven't seen it, you should visit.
took 10 years to build $250,000. It just shows how difficult and time-consuming this project is.
Yeah, but it was also grant funded, and part of what made it very difficult, I think we should be proud of the environmental protection we have in Vermont, but that's because it had to be built over a wetland. There were a lot of hoops to jump through to make it happen.
So good segue for some other social media posts.
Sure, you go ahead.
So yeah, in case you're not a big follower on Facebook, this post about town municipal forests, which Bennington has over 445 acres worth, almost all of which is not in the town of Bennington. This is two of our bigger parcels, the Rudd parcel in Woodford and the Fay Gibb parcel in Pownell. This generated over 8,000 reach on Facebook. People were really interested in hearing about this. And by the way, in terms of the write-up on this, we'll talk about how there's a forest management plan and how we're sustainably harvesting timber from those lots to support town activities. And that money that is generated from these activities goes into our capital improvements funds, which saves us money down the road. Next time we have a big ask or a big project, we already have the money, or at least some of it, on hand before we go to the taxpayers. Another one, this was the Pleasant Street unveiling. This one had 6,928 reach. People are really interested in this part of the community. It has been in the process of a transformation for over the last 10 years, and it's really pretty impressive, all the work that's been done. All the sidewalks, all the roads, many of the buildings have been restored. And 219 Pleasant Street was designed, at least in the second phase, it was originally built by another architect, but it was designed by William C. Bull, who is an architect who designed many of our historic buildings in town. And for some reason, people love equipment, right? So this military surplus D7 Caterpillar 6,490 reach. This cost the town $2,500. These things go for 100,000 plus used. So what an incredible savings for the town. And a shout out to Norman LeBlanc in North Bennington. He actually helped us navigate that military surplus system to get this for $2,000, and it cost us another $500 to get it shipped here. But people love hearing about that, because also it's a story about the town being good stewards of our tax dollars, right? Because that is what we want to see happening. And I have to mention this one. This was our top reach, 10,072 reach. What is it? This is Cassie Barbo. She's holding the original and the restored version of book A1. Or is it 1A? Yeah, no, A1 of the town records. And that is opened up to the very first town record for the town of Bennington. Wow. And in fact, for all of Vermont, 1762, very first meeting. This record and every record since is carefully stewarded and preserved by our town clerk. Going strong. It's amazing. So at this point, I'm gonna, that's enough social media for right now, but we'll jump back to Shannon.
So more around some of our priorities as a town and ways that we collaborate and work together is making downtown Bennington a destination. And if you've been paying attention to what's happening, there's a lot happening downtown right now. So of course we all know about the Putnam project, but some of these other photos are from Brewing, which is right on the Four Corners. And that business is doing really well, and this example also of the town loan program. So we have a revolving loan program that's designated particularly intended for small business development and for businesses in our downtown district to get very low interest loans to help get started. And so Farm Road was one of those that got a town loan to buy all of this brewing equipment. The other photo, I don't know if you can really see it, but that's the beautiful day for Garlic Fest, Garlic Town, which is kind of the rebranding of the Chamber's famous Garlic Fest activity in downtown Bennington, which started as a COVID response, but really was very successful, and we're continuing with that model, at least for the foreseeable future, and the downtown businesses have been happy to see the foot traffic that is also brought to them. So those are some examples of how we're working together. You know, the Putnam project required all kinds of different investment, but one of those was community development block grants. That's a program that I manage, which are federal funds that come to the state and then the municipalities, and then we as a town sub-grant those funds to different organizations. And then also building a new Bennington Town Green. These were back to those priorities that were set 10 years ago. We don't have one green space in the center of town like some other Vermont communities do, but what we have really tried to do in partnership with the Better Bennington Corporation is think about our different spaces and how we can use them, for arts and culture, recreation. One that's really become kind of the town green as of late is the splash pad. And all summer it was great to see kids playing there, the stage, the Thompson Family Stage being opened up, and we're working with the BBC for this coming season to have a regular weekly outdoor concert series, so that there'll be music every week. I think it's going to be a Thursday night project, and there's just more pictures. Also the Pocket Park that's right on along Main Street as well. The other work that we've been doing in partnership with Betsy is advancing our Bennington Community Center and Recreation Center. So the Rec Center, now called the Bennington Community Center, is just absolutely beautiful. The new addition that UCH has done for early childhood. You can see the new entrance here on the left, and then that's the inside view of the lobby. And now that serves our recreation center with the pool and fitness rooms, and then to the right is the early childhood center. So that's just a huge advancement in the community, particularly to be able to have early childhood with downtown. That was one of the goals of that whole project, and to think about the whole rec center campus as being something that we can build upon. And then the photo to the right is Ben High. We've been working with the owner there to also open up spaces for recreation. And we're having regular daily classes that the Y is managing, and they also use the space for their summer camp program, which we're glad we had because it was such a rainy summer that there was room for kids programming there already. And then just increasing programming, recreational programming for all ages. So to the left here is a photo of kids who are in the Y summer camp, being part of the Bennington Community Garden. You know, Marsh and Cindy were a big part of activities there this summer, and there's been kind of a revival of that space, working with the Y that's managing our recreation programs. You know, the pool continues to be hugely popular and utilized for all ages. This is a photo of the aqua aerobics classes. And then I don't know if you can see it, but this photo to the right is a picture of our teen counselors who were part of the summer camp program the Y did. So the Y is coming in with youth leadership programming, and they have programs both for counselors, so giving teens some of their first summer jobs, but also that age in between, you know, of kind of the 12 to 14-year-olds to help mentor them to be ready to get a job, and to get leadership experience. So that's been great to see. Now I'm going to hand it back to Jonah.
So no presentation I make is complete without talking about the 250th. And I have to apologize in advance because some of you have been with me on these past 5 years already that I've been talking about this. You have seen some of these slides before. So this will be a bit of a refresher for some of you, but perhaps new for others. So 250th of what? Of the founding of Vermont and the Battle of Bennington. And this is coming up just now in 5 years. 2027 is our big anniversary year. So founding Vermont's obviously a big deal, but why the Battle of Bennington? I could go on for hours, and some of you have heard me do this, about how cool the Battle of Bennington is. And I've got a few of the things listed, but I'm just going to point out a couple of things that just strike me as particularly significant. And this one I have to give credit to Don Miller of the Historical Society for this golden nugget, that more men were killed and captured at the Battle of Bennington than both battles of Saratoga, which is often called the turning point. But then you start to realize how significant the Battle of Bennington was to ensure that Saratoga happened in the way it did. And the second is the first successful storming of an artillery position. That seems perhaps insignificant to some, but this was a big deal. The British didn't think it could be done by an untrained, unprofessional militia. Boy, were they wrong. By the way, both of those paintings were actual paintings, well, paintings of the Battle of Bennington inspired by that battle. So, as you know, I'm big on history and how important it is to us as a community. And we have some eyes looking on us here. It's like the eyes of history, right? And dun dun dun, these eyes are looking at what? They're looking at the design of the Bennington Battle Monument. And here, folks, is Bennington Battle Monument? Yeah, right. This was the successful winning design for the Bennington Battle Monument, done by a committee of very esteemed muckety-mucks. And let me just tell you, the person whose eyes saw that, a gentleman by the name of Highland Hall, it was his eyes we saw. He took one look at that design and said, no way are we going to honor our battle much more grand in mind. And in fact, because of his work at the age of 80, we got Vermont's tallest man-made structure, over 306 feet tall, dedicated in 1891, 30,000 visitors a year. It's the most popularly visited historic site in the state of Vermont. And we have Highland Hall to thank, who, by the way, was the father-in-law of Turner Park at the Park McCullough House. And when he got that news, he was living in an apartment at the Park McCullough House, just a side. So we made a big deal when the monument was dedicated. We built an archway out of painted canvas on our main street. That was pretty cool.
That's painted canvas?
Yes, yes, with a choir of 100 Vestal virgins singing on the top.
Did you make that up?
Well, I don't know about the virgins part. There were people up there singing. So in 1927, this was perhaps our biggest celebration. 100,000 people supposedly were in Bennington to celebrate this, the Battle of Bennington. There's the cavalry marching down Main Street. So I mentioned a couple big ones, but I need to say that we have been celebrating this battle every single year since it happened. Happened in 1777, and 1778 was our first celebration. We've been celebrating it continuously ever since. I used to say we were the only Revolutionary War battle celebrated continuously, but then someone told me that Cowpens down in North Carolina has also been celebrated continuously, but their battle happened after ours. So just saying. But there have been, in addition to those annual celebrations, there's been some really big ones. We saw in 1927, we saw 1891, but also 1877, absolutely huge celebration. That's actually when President Rutherford B. Hayes came to Bennington for it. And in 1891, I should mention Benjamin Harrison, another sitting president, came for that celebration as well. And then 1976, a lot of us will remember that, the bicentennial. That was a big deal. It was the year after I moved to Vermont. And I remember going to Willow Park and seeing the reenactment and going, oh my God, this is awesome. I can't wait till next year. Little did I know, there was never going to be something like that again until possibly 2027, right? So we got to think big. What can we do? So it is around the holiday season. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was something about the Battle of Bennington that had significance with everyone in America? Well, here it is. The site of the first decorated Christmas tree in America, supposedly inspired by a German soldier captured at the Battle of Bennington. So there you go. And this is actually at the Newton Reed Museum in Windsor Locks, Connecticut. You probably can't read it, but the Hessian soldier was named Hendrik Rodemore. So we have Hendrik Rodemore from the Battle of Bennington to thank for our Christmas trees. Who would have thunk it, right? So nothing we do about celebrating our history makes any sense without education. Education is absolutely key to this, inspiring that next generation of people to have pride in place and to be stewards of this history going forward. This is pictures of a cultural heritage grant we got to do a deep dive into the Bennington battle history with Mount Anthony middle school students. And I am happy to say that there's a very active committee as part of the Vermont 250th Commission, which now exists, by the way, to work on getting more 250th related educational curriculum out to our students. And then with that, I think we are back to talking about more mundane things, but directly connected to where we are today. And I'm going to sort of start on these slides, and then I'm going to toss it to Shannon a little bit farther in. But one of the things that amazed me when I took my job at the town of Bennington was, as a former, well, I still am a taxpayer at the town of Bennington, but as a taxpayer, you always kind of wonder, aren't my tax dollars being spent well? And I can tell you, and I think I'm still new enough at the job that I can say this, but having had a look under the hood, I'm really impressed. I'm very impressed with the dedication of the workers at the town of Bennington and the efforts they're making to really stretch every tax dollar. And I'm also impressed with how good our infrastructure is. We're a town of under 16,000 people, but we have an amazing water system. We're actually fortunate here because we have great water. On the left, I have a picture of the Morgan Spring. I love the Morgan Spring. It's covered now because it is a water source. And primarily, we're selling that water now, but it is a backup water source for the town of Bennington to this day. It is capable of providing 85% of our water needs.
Wow.
I think it's 5,000 gallons a minute is how much comes out of that well. And it's a revenue generator for the town of Bennington. We sell that water to Poland Spring and other bottled water companies. When we get it from the source, we have to treat it. We have a very impressive state-of-the-art water treatment facility. And it's kind of in Pownell, right after you cross the Roaring Branch. It's on your right. It's not, thank you, Woodford. And it's a subtle building. It's just sort of like a block building, but inside it's impressive. First of all, it's so clean, it's shiny clean. It looks like you can eat off the floor. I mean, I don't think I would, but it's that clean. Even here, we see examples of efficiency. So on the left, that water, green pipe, that is where the water is coming in from Bowles Brook. And what do they do with it? They run it through a turbine to generate power. So even as the water is coming in, it's generating power to offset the cost of running that facility. And then on the other side, of course, you've got the waste treatment. And this is perhaps even more important for the environmentally speaking. And this is a very impressive facility. The bottom left-hand corner, I don't know if you can see that too well, but right there, that circular silo-shaped building is actually kind of like a big bellows. And the top part of it raises and lowers as methane gas accumulates that they get from the sludge that is breaking down as part of the facility. And then they use that methane gas to heat up more sludge so that anaerobic bacteria can break it down more quickly. So it's a pretty amazing situation, and then by the time the water gets through it, they can process up to 5 million gallons a day. It's usually around 3.4 million that gets processed. When it comes out the other side, it's safe, it's drinkable, but again, I'm not sure I would like be drinking it direct, but that's the level of care we put into the wastewater before we put it back into where? The Woonsock River, one of our favorite, my personal favorite trout fishing stream. So I'm very proud that the town takes that kind of effort with that. And our town highway department, 120 miles of road, that's the distance between here and Stamford, Connecticut. That's the amount of roads that our guys take care of every time it snows. On top of that, there's 41 miles of sidewalks. I think there's 18 bridges over 20 feet in width or in length. And all this is taken care of by our in-house town highway crew. And of course, the police department is a big part of what we do here in the town. And in a way, it was nice that Marsh mentioned the work that's happening with community policing, because part of the reason I have a slide up here is to talk about that there is an ongoing effort to implement community policing in a real way for Bennington so that our community and our police force are working in harmony as much as possible. And of course, our senior center, that's located on Pleasant Street. And do you have any comments on the senior center? Or?
Just that, during COVID, it was a real challenge, obviously, with seniors being vulnerable. But things are opened up again. I know that programming is happening. I know that Carrie Fabricius, who's the director of the senior center, has been doing a regular series of discussions with different community leaders. I think it's a coffee hour or something.
Coffee with the seniors.
Yeah, and then there are also programs that are offered through the Council on Aging as well.
And that's also the home for Meals on Wheels.
That's right.
And this, I'll let you jump back in.
Sure. Well, this is, we've already talked about, but it's just a photo of the new addition to the Rec Center, Community Center, and, just that it's such a valuable asset to Bennington residents.
And we're also getting used to the new name, so
Yeah.
Bennington Community Center. We still got the Rec Center too.
Okay. So other collaborations that the town is deeply involved in around affordable housing. So a lot of this federal funding that's, there's more now available than there really ever has been for affordable housing. And we work with partners such as Shires Housing, which is the Bennington County organization that's really focused on affordable housing. But their developments are, the way that affordable housing is done now is mixed income. So this is a great example of that, the Monument View apartments. If you haven't seen them, you really should. They're beautiful, and they're mixed income developments. So what that means is that when the development's done, there are market rate units that are, the higher end, and they go to various levels of affordability. So that just makes for a more equitable kind of development, and I think sometimes affordable housing gets a bad name as being substandard or sub-quality, but Shires Housing really does great work. And so the way that we work with them, particularly in community development, is that grants that we receive as a town, we sub-grant as a partner with Shires Housing. And we really look we identify what are the available buildings, how can we work together to redevelop and to have really more village-centered development that's walkable to different services. Another collaboration, Jonah, you can tell more about this story, but the BBC, the Better Bennington Corporation, along with our town building and grounds department, is in charge of the beautiful holiday decorations. I think Bennington has some some of the best around. I mean, it's just so wonderful. So we really should tell more about them.
And a lot of volunteers. For example, the two on the right, the kid that you're looking at who shows up on the left and sort of in the middle, his name is Colin. He lives in North Bennington, but he came in, I think it was on Veterans Day. There was no school. The kid had, out of his own money, he paid for a cab to come to Bennington so he could volunteer time to work on our Christmas decorations for downtown. So I just was struck by that level of dedication by a youth in our community because they care that deeply about our town and our downtown.
The Riverwalk pathway, sadly, I'm sure you've all heard about the tragedy of the murder that happened on the Riverwalk. But what many people may not know is that there have been discussions about improvements on the Riverwalk for the last few years, and in partnership with the Better Bennington Corporation, their design committee and Mike McDonough, if you don't know him, he's been really the driving force to redesign, improvements for the Riverwalk. So this is it's a little bit hard to see here, but it's the scoping study that he's been working on for the last couple of years that we're going to actually put into a grant application for a downtown transportation fund grant.
And I would just add, it also takes into account a lot of feedback from partners and collaborators that came on board as a result of the Emily Hammond tragedy, including the Interface Council, which has sort of been leading this effort of pulling collaborators together to help work on improving the safety and improving the, just beautifying the Riverwalk as a whole. And really, it's been just about a year now since that work started, and the amount of work that has gone into it is really quite impressive at this point.
And really just highlighting what an asset it is. Like having people, walk along the walk, get feedback about what improvements they want to see, how it can be used. It's all really important, and it's something that we'll put into, the funding that we're trying to get, which hopefully we can do this year, at least in part. It will probably happen in stages. So our marketing campaign, Vermont Begins Here, we really work hand in hand with the Chamber of Commerce, the Southwestern Vermont Chamber of Commerce, and the Better Bennington Corporation. And so that includes, the online marketing, the social media, but also the events. So we're really trying to focus on how can we pull more people into downtown with different kinds of festivals and regular events. So, the Garlic Town is an example of that. Mayfest is coming back this year. A series at the Splash Pad stage. Those are just some examples, but I think having a new director at the BBC is going to be really great too, because she's bringing that kind of event planning background. So we'll be doing more together. And another collaboration that's been developing over the last few years is around outdoor recreation. So we all know that Bennington is this wonderful place for outdoor recreation, but we want to get the word out to everyone, who's coming through that Bennington is this destination. So some of our partners are the Green Mountain Club. We've also been designated as an Appalachian Trail community over the last year. So that means that the Trail Conservancy that maintains all of the Appalachian Trail has us on the map and is marketing Bennington to hikers that are coming through. The Bennington Area Trail System, BATS, now in partnership with the hospital that bought the former SVC campus, is another partner, and Lake Huron. So, and Prospect Mountain Association as well. So we've been meeting kind of as a coalition of all those organizations because the town is also a recreation manager. We own a lot of land. So thinking about how we can work together to get more people outside and developing that for outdoor recreation.
Fun side note, of course, the Appalachian Trail is also the same as the Long Trail for the entire length that goes through Bennington and Bennington County. And the Long Trail was inspired by some hikers sitting on top of Stratton Mountain. And in turn, the Long Trail inspired the creation of the Appalachian Trail. So the fact that we are now an Appalachian Trail community is kind of coming full circle. One of the first things I got to do when I started my job was we did a survey of the town's citizens. 33 questions over a wide range of topics. 638 citizens ended up responding to this survey and telling us what they thought. All things about living and working in Bennington and trying to get feedback from folks on what we could do better. And that was really a useful exercise for me as a new person in this role as a communications coordinator. But of course, more important, an opportunity for the citizens to give their feedback back to the town. The entire survey and all the details is available on the town's website. And it also sort of leads us to our final slide, which is, what are your ideas? What are your thoughts? What would you like to hear from us and your questions in general? And that's our final slide. So.